The wind howled like a wounded spirit across the empty plains, carrying dust, cold, and whispers of danger. It was the kind of night that made even the bravest men lock their doors and keep their rifles close. Inside a small wooden cabin at the edge of nowhere, Jacob Hale, a rugged cowboy with a past he rarely spoke of, sat by the fire. He had seen war, betrayal, and loss, but nothing unsettled him like silence. And tonight, the silence between gusts of wind felt wrong. Jacob adjusted his hat and stared into the flames. Life had been simple once: ride, work, survive. But ever since he left the town after a violent feud, he had chosen isolation over companionship. Out here, there were no questions. No memories. Just him, and the cold. Then came the sound. A faint creak. Jacob froze. His hand slowly reached for the rifle resting beside him. The door hadn't opened. The windows were shut tight. Still, something was inside. The fire flickered violently as a gust of wind pushed against the cabin. Then, another sound. A soft movement. Not loud. Not threatening. But close. Jacob stood up slowly, every muscle tense. He scanned the room, nothing. Just shadows dancing across the walls. He exhaled sharply. "You're losing your edge," he muttered. But when he turned toward his bed, he stopped. There was someone there. A figure beneath his blanket. His heart slammed against his chest. Without thinking, he raised his rifle, but something made him hesitate. The figure wasn't moving aggressively. In fact, it was trembling. Jacob stepped closer, cautiously. Then, slowly, he pulled back the blanket. And what he saw made his heart stop. A woman. Her dark hair was tangled, her skin pale from the cold, and her body shaking uncontrollably. She was clearly exhausted, barely conscious. Her clothes were worn and thin, not meant for this freezing night. And then he noticed it. The markings. Subtle, but unmistakable. She was Apache. Jacob's breath caught. Tension filled the air instantly. The land had seen too much blood between cowboys and Apache tribes. Trust didn't exist, it couldn't. So why was she here? Why his cabin? Why his bed? The woman stirred slightly, her lips trembling as she whispered something in a language he didn't understand. Jacob lowered his rifle slowly. This wasn't an attack. This was survival. He hesitated only for a moment before acting. He grabbed another blanket and covered her more securely, then added wood to the fire. Her body was ice cold. If she had stayed outside, she wouldn't have made it till morning. Minutes passed. The storm raged louder outside. Inside, the silence returned, but this time, it felt different. He sat beside the bed, watching her. Suspicious. Conflicted. But also, concerned. "Why here?" he muttered under his breath. As if hearing him, her eyes fluttered open. For a brief moment, their gazes locked. Fear flashed across her face. Jacob raised his hand slightly, signaling no harm. "Easy," he said softly. "You're safe." She didn't understand his words, but she understood his tone. Still, her eyes were filled with something deeper than fear. Pain. And secrets. Her lips parted again, and this time she forced out a single word in broken English. "Run." Jacob frowned. Run. From what? Before she could answer, her eyes rolled back, and she lost consciousness again. Jacob stood there, stunned. Run. From what? The storm outside suddenly didn't feel like the biggest danger anymore. He looked toward the door, then back at the woman. Something had followed her. And now, it might be coming for him too. He tightened his grip on the rifle. For the first time in years, Jacob Hale felt something he thought he had buried long ago. Not fear, but purpose. And as the fire burned brighter, he made a silent decision. Whoever she was, whatever trouble she carried, he wasn't going to let it take her. Morning didn't come quietly. Jacob woke to the sound of hooves. Fast. Too fast. His eyes snapped open. The fire had died down, leaving only faint warmth in the cabin. The woman was still on the bed, but now awake. Sitting upright. Alert. Listening. She heard it too. Their eyes met. This time, there was no fear in hers. Only urgency. "They come," she said, her English broken but clearer now. Jacob grabbed his rifle instantly. "Who?" She shook her head. "Bad men. Not Apache. Worse." That was enough. Jacob moved quickly, checking his ammunition and peering through the window. In the distance, 3 riders. Closing in. Fast. His jaw tightened. "They're tracking you," he said. She nodded slowly. "I bring danger," she admitted. Jacob looked back at her. For a moment, he could have told her to leave. Could have walked away, like he always did. But he didn't. Instead, he said something even he didn't expect. "Then we face it together." Something shifted in her expression. Trust. Not full, but enough. She stood, a bit unsteady, but determined. "My name." "Ayanna." Jacob nodded. "Jacob." Outside, the riders were closer now. No more time. Jacob handed her a spare revolver. She hesitated, then took it. "You know how to use it?" he asked. A faint, confident look crossed her face. "Yes." That told him everything. They took positions. The tension inside the cabin was thick enough to choke on. The first rider stopped just outside. Then another. Then the third. Silence. Then a voice. "Come out, girl. You can't hide forever." Ayanna's grip tightened. Jacob glanced at her. "You know them." She nodded. "They killed my family." That was all Jacob needed to hear. His expression hardened. Outside, the voice grew impatient. "Or we burn this place down." Jacob smirked slightly. They picked the wrong cabin. The first shot came from outside, shattering the window. And then chaos. Gunfire erupted. Jacob moved like a man reborn, precise, fearless. Years of experience guided every shot. Ayanna fought beside him, not as someone helpless, but as someone who had survived. The fight was fast. Brutal. And decisive. When the dust settled, the riders were gone. Or worse. Silence returned once more. But this time, it wasn't empty. Jacob lowered his weapon slowly. Ayanna stood beside him, breathing heavily. Alive. Safe. For now. They looked at each other, not as strangers anymore, but as 2 souls who had just crossed a line together. "You could have left," she said quietly. Jacob shrugged. "I don't run anymore." A faint smile touched her lips. For the first time, warmth filled the cabin that had nothing to do with fire. Days passed. The storm was gone. But something new had taken its place. Connection. Trust. And something deeper neither of them spoke about, but both felt. Jacob found himself changing. Laughing more. Living again. And Ayanna, she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was healing. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and crimson, they stood outside the cabin. "You will stay?" Jacob asked. Ayana looked at the endless land, then back at him. Yes, she said softly. And in that moment, Jacob realized something that truly made his heart stop. Not fear. Not shock. But something far more powerful. He had found a reason to belong again. And this time, he wasn't going to lose it. Fire final hook for viewers. Sometimes, the greatest battles lead to the most unexpected love. Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe now for more unforgettable stories full of emotion, mystery, and powerful endings. Your next favorite story is just one video away.